The following story is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. Two years ago, during the summertime, I went camping with my wife. We brought our 40-pound German Shepherd along a creek in a popular area in a nearby national forest. Now, this was an established site. They just didn't have a campground. So we parked. It was pretty easy to find parking because it was kind of dead for the time of the year it was. We found a fireplace and a nice flat area to set up the tent. The tent had nice access to the creek. It was within steps. So as the day progressed to night, we were awoken by a large truck being parked by our car. We were still within seeing distance of the parking lot, so we just saw a giant truck with a light bar just idling. Eventually, the engine to the truck turns off. The three men get out of the truck and they begin to walk towards us. We can see this from the screened part of our tent, and they're slowly walking towards our campsite. They are talking pretty quietly, but the sounds of the creek nearby makes us unable to dictate what they're saying. But based on the tone of what we hear, my wife and I were pretty sure it was not a good thing. While this whole thing was happening, our German Shepherd was growling, but very lowly at the time. I whispered to my wife to be quiet. I also told her to hold on to the dog and hide. I got out of the sleeping bag and I put my shoes on. I had to be ready to confront whoever was coming towards us. They were walking extremely slow towards us, and this was a threatening sight to see in the middle of the night. The only thing I had for defense was a forest axe. It was a mix between a hatchet and an axe, extremely useful for getting by in the woods. It had a leather sheath with a metal button on the side to protect the blade. These three men took their time. I figured they were trying to intimidate us, but they eventually got closer to the tent. When they got within 30 to 40 feet of our location, I loudly popped the metal button, taking the leather sheath off of my forest axe, preparing to defend myself, my wife, and my dog. And as soon as I did that, my dog started barking really loud as well. All three of the men heard the latch, and I'm gonna assume that they thought it was a gun holster or something. But as soon as my dog started barking, and they heard that sound come from my forest axe, they stopped, dead in their tracks, and turned around and sped walked back to their truck. They didn't say a word. They put the truck in drive, and they drove away. This whole interaction lasted about 15 minutes. My wife and I packed up our stuff quickly. We grabbed the dog, and we got out of there. We had no idea what those three men had planned for us, but I'm glad that it played out the way it did, because I refused to be a victim. This happened to me when I was 12 years old. I was waiting for my ride after school one day, and this big white family van pulls up in front of me. A man pulls the window down and he asks if I'm waiting for a ride. My family had a van just like this one, so I wasn't suspicious or anything. I was kind of naive. I didn't register that yes, I am waiting for a ride, and he was asking an obvious question. Because here I am, sitting outside the school all by myself. But I decided to answer him anyways. The man proceeded to ask me what my name was, and I hesitated a little bit, but he explained that he was looking for someone so I gave it to him. I told him that my name was Trisha. So then he says, "Oh, it's you that I'm looking for. Your mom asked me to come pick you up from school. My name's Sam. I'm your mom's nephew." I never really met my mom's side of the family, so I wasn't that aware of who was on my mom's side. Eager to just get home and get out of the cold, I didn't question him that much. Even though I was a bit skeptical, I sat in the very back. Thinking back on it now, I realize how dumb of a decision that was. So, as I was sitting in the back, we started driving towards the opposite direction of my house. At first, I thought it's no big deal, because there was a route this way, but it was just a bit farther and out of the way. But as we drove, I realized this route was completely out of the way. I had no idea where he was going. At this point, I started to get a little concerned because I had no idea where this strange man was taking me, and I just realized I didn't want to be in that car anymore. All traces of tiredness had left me, and I was on the edge of my seat. I asked him if he could just take me home, that if my mom sent him, that he should know that I'm really not allowed to go out after school, but he just kept ignoring me and looked straight towards the road. I started to bawl my eyes out, and other cars were passing us on the highway, and I just didn't know what to do. At one point, as I was continuing to cry, then he slams his hands on his dashboard, and then he says, "This would be a lot easier if you just be quiet." The tone in his voice is what had set me over the top. I knew I needed to do everything I possibly could to get out of that car. He got off the highway, and thankfully on the exit, it was a red light, so he had to stop. As soon as the car slowed down, I pulled up on the door lock, and I jumped out. In all honesty, I wasn't really thinking about it much, but if I chickened out, who knows what would have happened if I stayed in that car, but thank God I didn't. As soon as I opened the door, I hit the ground and landed on my left leg. The pain was so bad, but I didn't care, because in my head, anything was better than being in that car with that man. The dude didn't even bat an eye towards me. He didn't even try to grab me. As soon as I was outside of the car and he saw me on the ground, he just sped away. He ran the red light. The driver behind me actually almost hit me, but stopped just in time, and they got out and ran towards me. They called the police and my parents as well, but to this day, I'm not allowed to wait outside anywhere. And even when I'm done with whatever I'm doing, my parents need to be outside waiting. So, just a note for anybody in the future: please make sure you know whose car you're getting in. I used to work at a bar that was about 2 miles from my house. I lived in the city. My shift ended about 1 in the morning, and I stayed there for a couple of drinks. I started walking home after. Now, this had been a very good night for me. I made about $400 in tips. So, I decided to start walking towards my house. Now, mind you, between the bar and my house, there was only 2 or 3 streetlights that actually lit up the road. The rest of the walk was actually in complete darkness. This was a very dark night too. It was close to new moon. It was also cloudy, which didn't make it any better, so it was almost pitch black outside. Now, I don't live in a big city. It's more of like a small city, and the outskirts is all boonies. So there's not even that much light pollution that would help out if it was a bigger city. Not that long after I leave the bar, I see a car slowly driving by me. A quarter mile down the road, the car slows down to a stop, and it just sits there. I stop walking, and I watch the car. It sits there for about a few minutes, and then it slowly drives away. A couple minutes later, the same car comes slowly driving back by me, but in the opposite lane. It gets by me, drives down the road a little bit, and it slows down to a complete stop again. Then, after a few moments, it does a U-turn and starts creeping back down the road towards me. My heart stopped when the person in the car turned the headlights off. At this point, I was terrified and I was afraid for my life. Now, this was back then when cell phones didn't really exist, so I didn't have one on me, and there was definitely not anybody around to see what was going on. The car was now between me and the bar, so I couldn't even get back to safety there, and my house was still about a mile up the road, so there's no way I could quickly escape to get there. I quickly run off to the side, into the woods, and I duck down behind a large bush, and I just watch for the car. But it's just way too dark to see with the lights off, so I had to listen for it to pass by. I sat there for about 10 minutes, and I didn't see or hear anything at all. It's still pitch black outside, I can't see anything. I'm about to make my way back to the road, when I hear car doors closing. I heard 3 of them close. Now I'm panicking. It feels like my chest is about to explode. My heart was racing. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up, and I keep imagining somebody sneaking up behind me. I stay hidden, and I hope to God whoever it is doesn't find me. I don't know how long I stay there, but I eventually hear the car doors again. Then the car passes by, and I give it a couple minutes, and I ease back into the road. When I see that it's clear, as soon as the coast is clear, I book it back to the bar, and I immediately let my boss know what had happened. He said, right then and there, I am never able to walk home at night ever again.